Summer is almost over, folks. Sorry if you didn't know that. Sorry to burst your bubble, but it's almost time to go back to school. But now that we are not quite done with summer yet, it's the end of summer, and before school officially starts back up in earnest, I want to take a second and look back on all the things we did this summer. See, this summer was busy for me, and we've done a lot of things. VBS and Day Spring and Disciple Camp and Kids Camp and whatever all you guys have been doing that I haven't been doing, like, I don't know, band or football or something, I don't know. We've done a lot of things this summer, so you guys have had a lot of opportunities to, you know, listen to God and talk to God. And so when we were, you know, at these camps, on these trips, I got to talk to a lot of you guys about the same kind of thing. A lot of you guys talked to me about the same kind of thing. You said, I've talked to God here at camp, I've listened to God here at camp, and I made promises to God that I'll be a good person, that I'll be a better person, a person who cares about other people more than myself. I've made all these promises, but I'm scared that it's just like a camp thing. And that when I go back to school, when I go back to those friends, that I'll forget all the promises I made to God, I'll forget all the things that I said at camp on mission trip to those kids at VBS, and I won't be able to continue this once I, you know, go back into real life. And that's not just like an at camp thing. That's not just a thing like, oh, you make promises at camp and then you just, that's not just an at camp thing. We make commitments to people and all of the time. Not just with God, and I'll get to that point in just a little bit, but we make commitments to our schools, our parents, our friends. We make commitments all the time, every day. And so before I talk about what it means to make commitments to God, I think it's important to know what we're talking about. See, this series is called Commit. And so we've made a lot of commitments this past summer that are going to go into this coming school year. So I want to get a handle on what a commitment is first. So the word commit, it means to pledge or to bind to something. And I really like how Merriam and Mr. Webster, I really like the wording that they put here, being bound to something. Because I mean, when I think of, you know, something being bound to something, I think like literally you grab some rope and tie it to something, and so that if it tries to get away, it can't. And I really think of, you know, a person being like tied to something and trying to get out, and you can't. And so when you make a commitment, that's kind of really what it is. You bind yourself to it, you tie yourself to it, and you can't get out of it a lot. Like you have to actively get out of that. And so that makes commitment sound a lot more, you know, intimidating, doesn't it? I mean, but that's really what it is. So, let's like say, you know, you're on your phone, you're watching some YouTubes, and your mom says, hey, I need you to take out the trash, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're like, okay, definitely, Mom, right after this video. And then, like, you become bound to taking out that trash. And it's the second that video is over. You're supposed to, like, you've committed to taking out the trash. But then, you forget to turn off the autoplay, and the next related video is only 2 seconds away, and the video comes on. It's a very short video. Your mom doesn't know how long the video is, and then so you just watch that video, and then you've broken that commitment. You severed that rope, you cut it, and now it's going to be a lot easier to cut it again and cut it again. It's going to be a lot harder to make those commitments and bind yourself to those things that you pledge yourself to, that you commit to. So, see, if you this past summer have like been wanting to like make these big commitments, these life-changing, life-altering, big deal commitments to God, but you can't make a small little commitment to your mom, it's going to be so much harder for you. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say, and I'm going to talk about this story. It's in the Old Testament of the Bible, I'm sure most of you know this story. It's a common story. It's a story about a guy who made a bunch of small commitments to God, and he got in conflict with some other commitments that he had made. You can find this story for yourself in Daniel 6, if you'd like to dig a little bit deeper, but I'll just summarize it for you now. So, there's this Jewish kid. He's in a bunch of leadership classes. He's really popular. He's athletic, takes a lot of pre-AP classes. He's overall a really cool guy. Let's call him Daniel. So, when his country got conquered by the big country next door, let's call them Babylon, they took all the leadership kids. They took all the pre-AP class kids. They took all the popular kids, all the athletic kids. They took them away from their country so they could be the really good generals and advisors and politicians and scholars for Babylon instead of Israel. And so Daniel was one of these kids because he was, cool, athletic, pre-AP, whatever. And he was trained and he was prepped to be one of these advisors, and quite really, he just rocked at it. All the people who he served with, all the kings were like, yeah, this guy's good. This guy rocks. So, our story starts when he's an old man. His whole life he had done really well and given really good advice, and so he was the king, one of the king's top 3 guys. The king had like 3 go-to guys. Daniel was one of them. And so there were other people who wanted to be one of those top 3 guys, and they didn't like it because politics. And so they decided they wanted to knock him down a peg or two. And so they came up with a bunch of plans about how to knock him down a peg or two. None of them worked because he was awesome. But then, one day, they figured out Daniel's one weakness. Daniel was a follower of God. And he prayed 3 times a day, no matter what. No matter what was going on that day, whether he was super busy, whether there was a whole lot of, I don't know, politics going on, he would take time, he was committed to praying to God 3 times every day. And so, that's what they thought his weakness was. And so they hatched a plan and went to the king. They went to the king, they said to the king, hey, you know who's super great? The king was like, who? They're like, you are. And they're like, you're right, I am pretty cool. I mean, and they're like, you know what sounds good? He was like, what? Everybody should worship you. Oh yeah, that sounds good. And you know what else? They can't worship anybody else. I was like, okay, yeah, I like this. And for a whole month, nobody should worship anybody but you. I like it, I like it. And if they do, well, I don't know, throw them into a cave filled with lions that are really hungry. We have one of those, Stephen, right? Yeah, we have one of those. Yeah, so that sound good? Oh yeah, I like it. And so they went, and the king approved this thing that said everybody has to worship him for a month, or they get killed by hungry lions. Sounds fair. So, they spread this thing all over Babylon, and Babylon was like, oh man, I guess I just have to worship the king for a month. That's no fun. But Daniel and Emmanuel saw it too. And this decree made a clear conflict from what he was supposed to do, what he was committed to do, praying to God and only worshiping God, and what his boss said, what his work said, what his country said, which was, don't do that. And so there was a clear conflict. And so Daniel did what he'd always done. He prayed to God 3 times a day. The other guys saw this, and they were pumped. They got hyped. They saw this, and they're like, got him. And so they went, and they grabbed him, and they took him to the king, and they told him, hey, this guy broke your laws. This guy did the things that you said not to do. You're going to kill him, right? And the king was like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. That sounds not good. The king did not like this. Because, Daniel was his favorite old man. But the king had to stick to his word. The king promised to do this. The king made a commitment to his people that said, I'm going to kill anybody who doesn't do this. He made that commitment. And so Daniel had to die by lions in a cave. And so they took him to the cave and they tossed him in. And these lions were not like Kalu at the Tulsa Zoo. That's the name of the lion at the Tulsa Zoo. He's really friendly. They weren't healthy and friendly. These lions were hungry and meat and malnourished. And they liked to eat human because that's the only thing they were allowed to eat. So Daniel got thrown into this pit, and everybody was expecting to hear a series of sounds. First, a roar, then some screaming, then some ripping and screaming, and then only ripping, and then some licking, and then some silence. That's what they expected to hear. But that's not what they heard. Daniel fell in the middle of these hungry, malnourished, sad lions. They were very malnourished and they were just sad lions. And they just kind of sat there. They just kind of looked around. And, like when you actually go to the zoo and see the lions, they're just standing there and sitting and not really doing anything interesting. That's kind of how they were. And they were like that for the whole night. They just didn't touch him, regardless of how hungry they were. They're just little cats. And so, the whole night, the king was worried, and then crack of dawn, king sprints there and was like, "Where's my favorite old man?" And Daniel was like, "Hey, what's up?" And they pulled him up, and he was fine, and then the king said like, "Oh yeah, that was a bad law. I'm gonna write a new decree that said God's awesome and he rocks." And then he remembered, wait a minute, there are these bad guys who said that you should do this, and then they'd get political moves if you died, so I'm going to throw them into the lion cave instead. And so they died, and everybody lived happily ever after, except for them. So, I tell this story for a couple of reasons. I know you guys know this story, but this story is has some really good examples of what commitment is. And these people in this story show commitment really well. So there's two things I'm going to talk about. First, Daniel. Daniel obviously had commitment. That's Daniel right there. Those lions, they're much more nourished in that photo than they actually were because they were sad in the actual life. But Daniel obviously had commitment. He committed to God that he would pray on a daily basis and devote himself on a daily basis to talking and listening to God. And it wasn't a big thing, honestly. Like, it's a pretty small commitment to make, just talk to God 3 times a day. Didn't cost any money, didn't cost a whole lot of time. You didn't have to make a show of it to everybody you know. It just like a relatively small daily thing. And so the first lesson from this, honestly, is fulfilling these small commitments matters, and it helps you be able to do those big commitments. By being able to just do a daily little commitment, you'll be able to make big commitments when it matters. And so the second thing that I want to talk about from this story is the king. The king made a commitment too. He didn't commit to God in this story or anything, but he did commit to others. He made a law that everybody in the kingdom had to follow, and if they didn't do it, he committed to kill them. Not really a good commitment to make, but he made this commitment to other people. And following through on the commitments you make to other people help you be able to make those commitments to God. If you can't fulfill a commitment to your mom, you won't be able to fulfill your commitments to God nearly as easily. And so, when I was a senior in high school, I was in this thing called the Pride of Broken Arrow Marching Band. And this year, they did a thing that the color guard always did when I was there. They do this like dance thing in the summer where like preps for, it's like a showcase or something. I don't know what it's called. I don't remember. It doesn't have a name, I don't think. They keep yelling this thing. I don't know what it's called. So they do this thing and like helps them like get like kind of the theme for the year and helps them prep to figure out what like the show is going to be and just helps him out. So it kind of, not exactly the theme, but it relates. So this year they were doing something different where the guys were a part of it. Like some dudes, and they picked the guys who were like the best at dancing. So I was obviously picked to do this thing, and they were paired with this partner, and so there were a couple weeks of practice, and then there was this big old like showcase kind of thing. And so the only problem though was that the last week of practice was the same week as VBS. So I was committed to being a part of VBS. I was committed to being in that drama room and talk about little Jesus stories for all the little kids. I was committed to Karen and my mom and all the kids and to God to do this. But I was also committed to Pride. I was supposed to learn this dance and work with my partner, and so that would help us figure out how to be, dance partners for the whole year. And so, that week I missed morning practices for the dance thing to do VBS. When my commitment with Pride came in conflict with my commitment to God, one of those things had to win. One of those things has to win. So, and when Daniel's commitment to his king came in conflict with Daniel's commitment to God, one of those things has to win. This summer, that summer, helping kids learn the stories of Jesus beat out learning dance moves to help us win Grand Nationals that year. And there were consequences to me missing out on that. Me and my partner were gonna be, literally front and center, but instead we're like front and far left. See, we commit to those big things. No, I skipped something. But, we practiced out, it took a lot of, we had to practice outside of the normal practice. We had to do things that all the other people in Pride didn't have to do because I missed out on that. But it ended up and we made the show look great and it was all fine. But I had to make a sacrifice because those two things came in conflict. See, we all commit to things. We all have commitments that we have made for this coming school year, like Pride, like soccer or leadership class. We all have things that we are going to be committed to this coming year. And we commit to those big things. We commit to those big things like Pride or cross country or show choir. And we commit to those big things, and we also commit to smaller things on like a daily basis. Like keeping your word to your parents, or doing your homework on time. And so we need to keep all of those commitments. See, when we're about to go into small group. When we go into small group, we're going to talk about what we're committed to this year. This coming school year, what are we committed to? What are you devoting your time and your effort? What are you committing to this year? Are you committing yourself to God by committing to these things? But more importantly, we keep the commitments you made this summer. I know a lot of us went on these summer camps and mission trips and did all these things, and at those things, we made these big commitments to God. And a lot of times they're hard to keep. But we need to work on keeping those commitments to God too. Okay, so the theme for this is commit, like I've said like 80 times. And it comes from when I was scrolling through Instagram the other day, I saw yet another high school person who played football really, really well commit to OU. It was awesome. Boomer Sooner. And that's kind of where the name for this came from. Committing, as a high schooler, to a college to play sports. See, when somebody's a high school athlete and commits themselves into college, they are really they're changing from just their normal self to representing that college. think there's a picture of somebody committing in high school to a college. And when they do that, they choose to wear the colors that year. They choose to go to do the cheers and be that school embodied, really. And more importantly, they go to practice. They do the work in the college. They do all of like the schoolwork. And they play their hearts out in the game. So that's really what you do when you commit to God. When you commit to God, you need to do all the same kind of things. You need to wear the colors, do the cheers, but more importantly, you need to do the work. You need to go to practice. You need to play your heart out. You need to be committed. I'm going to leave you guys with one little verse. It's from Paul's letter to the Romans. I like the Romans because they're most similar to us because they're super busy and they're all that stuff. So Romans 12:1 and 2 says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in my view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifice. To offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good and pleasing and perfect will." Offer your bodies as a sacrifice. Commit yourself entirely to God. Don't conform to how everybody is around you. Don't conform to how everybody is just living their life. And don't judge yourself by the standard of how other people, how society does, but judge yourself based on God. And be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be more like God. Commit yourself to God.